celebration of the Divine Appearance Day of Sri Ramachandra, and I'm very happy to be here, broadcasting live from ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Thanks for coming in, those of you who are here in the live studio, and those who are joining online from various places around the world. It is the sole purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement, or shall I say it was the sole purpose of the founder Acharya of the Krishna consciousness movement, to provide an environment for people of the world where constant transcendental vibration is going on, because by changing the vibration in one's environment, one immediately becomes rectified of what? The anxiety of material life, which is really caused by having an unstable mind. And the only remedy, or chikitsatam, remedial measure, as Narada Muni puts it in the 5th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is by connecting everything to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Srimad Bhagavatam describes how the best way to connect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is through hearing and chanting about Him. Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Whatever we hear and chant about in our lives, we'll naturally remember later. And when we remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then our lives become auspicious. Apavitra pavitro va sarvavastam katopiva yasmaret pundarikaksham sababhya yantara shuchihi. Because of the contaminating nature of the material world, we always have to purify ourselves by touching water, taking bath, seeing the Lord in the temple room, and so forth. The supreme means of purification, inside and out, however, is mentioned in the verse I just quoted, and that is that if one can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one becomes naturally purified inwardly and outwardly. So it stands to reason then that when Srila Prabhupada came to the United States and went around the world, he established the principle of hearing and chanting about Krishna and about all his incarnations. It's called Avatar Katha. Avatar Katha is one of the topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam, describing the nature, the qualities, the lila, pastimes of Krishna when he comes to this world. So this is such a joyous occasion, the appearance of Lord Ram. Every year here at ISV, the devotees organize ahead of time to read the entire Ramayana and listen together the pastimes of Lord Ram. In summary form, of course, the Ramayana is quite long, 3 times longer than the Bhagavatam, and it would take a little longer probably to finish it than the few weeks that we usually take. Nonetheless, just hearing the summarized pastimes of Lord Ramachandra is all auspicious. And in his Leela, the Maryada Leela, in which he shows the world, the activities, and character of a perfect person, a perfect king, one who is completely moral. Boy, isn't that hard to find? There's always some flaw somewhere. However, Ramachandra, although he comes as a human being, is devoid of any flaws because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So tonight we'll talk about Ramachandra and we'll chant the holy names of the Lord. I know we have some kind of schedule to keep, and I probably should know what it is, but someone will remind me at some point. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Vadatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamvar Kadahmaya Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhupya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Nitai Namineche Namirhate Sharamulye Namdite Chere Nitai Namineche Namirhate Shadhamulye Namdite Chere Nitai Namineche Namirhate Shadhamulye Namdite Chere Nitai Namineche Namirhate Sharamye Namdite Chere Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Nitai Gaur Premanande Haribo. So, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes into this world, apparently as a human being, as Arjuna notes in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he calls the Somya Vapu, very pleasing form of the Lord with 2 hands, 2 feet, 1 head, beautiful body, indescribably beautiful and perfect in all ways. In fact, Bhushanam Bhushananam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami describes how the Lord is the ornament of his ornaments. The ornaments don't ornament him, but they become ornamented by being on the body of the Lord. He's so beautiful, everything perfect. And he comes in various colors, different ages, as Gargamuni in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam describes to Nanda Maharaj. Asan varnas trayo yasya grindato nu yugam tanum shuklo raktastha pita idanim krishna tam gata. He says, your son now is coming as Krishna, blackish, but asan varnas trayo yasya grindato nu yugam tanum. He has different tanum, different bodies, and he named Shuklo Raktas Tata Pita. Shuklo Raktas Tata Pita. That's the color of white, red, yellow, black, and other colors. Ramachandra is mentioned there by the acharyas, just like the color of a parrot, green color, very beautiful bodies the Lord manifests here in this world, but not as many people who are uneducated in the spiritual science think, and that is that there's an impersonal void, which is the absolute truth, and then from that void, manifested by the modes of goodness, there's a form that's manifested that represents that impersonal personality of Godhead, or the absolute truth, rather. In fact, the opposite is true. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Varanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yash jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. Sutta Goswami describes how the Lord, the Advaya Gyan Tattva, the absolute truth, which is non-dual, the Supreme Personality of God, manifests himself in 3 features: the Brahman, Paramatman, Bhagavan. But as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Vyaktam Vyaktam Manyate Mam Abhudhaya. People are abhudhaya. They have no intelligence. They think that actually the impersonal has manifested as a person. And Krishna says, no, this is not true. In fact, it's the opposite. Everything, including Paramatma, Brahman, all the material energies, Eka Desha Stitastyagnir Jochna Vistarano Naraniyata, Parasya Brahmara Shaktistatedam Akilang Jagat. The Vishnu Purana says, just as the sun manifests heat and light, and it is all pervasive from the sun. So similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has his form, his pastimes, his planet, Goloka Namni Nijadamni Chaleta Sasya, But he manifests himself parasya shaktir vivaraiva shuyate swabhavika jnana balakriya cha in multifarious energies that are all pervasive. And so we can rejoice in the fact that actually there is a personality of Godhead. Otherwise, we would be more than God if we're manifestations of that original source of everything, but he didn't have qualities and we do. He didn't have intelligence and we do. It doesn't make logical sense, nor is it the fact according to the Shastra. So the personality of Godhead has his own abode. There's a material and a spiritual world demarcated by the Viraja river. The material world is for those who are meant for birth and death and who are out of sync with the vibration of the spiritual world. And therefore they have this reflection of the spiritual world in which to engage themselves in a fool's paradise. This is the nature of the material world, that is a reflection of the original spiritual world. And Krishna mentions this, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita when he tells Arjuna in 15th chapter, Urdhva mulamada shakamashvatam prahuraviyam jadamsi yasya parnani yasam veda saveda vit adashchurvam prashitas tasya shaka guna pravida vishaya prabhala adashcha mulan anusantatani karmanubandini manusha loke. Then he says, now rupam asyeha tato palabhyate nanto nachadir natasam pratishta ashvatamenam suvaruram bulam asanga shastrena judhena chitva tatat padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuya tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatat praviti prashita purani. There he's describing that the material world, which is full of variety, is the reflection of the true reality, that which is eternally manifest in the spiritual world. As we can see for ourselves, in this world, the variety is always changing. It's as if in a dream, when you go to embrace a beautiful person or you have attained some beautiful destination and all of a sudden it morphs into something that is undesirable, ugly, scary. All that happens in this world also. You may be united with the most beautiful person and then he or she turns into an ogre-like person. Just perhaps moves a little more slowly here in the material world, but the change always takes place. The dream world, this material world, is made of very insubstantial circumstances, and the material nature is always changing. Nasato vidite bhavo and bhavo vidite sata, Krishna says. If you study it carefully, you'll see. So you'll see that there's no substantial circumstance here in the material world. And the forms are always changing. But Krishna's form never changes. And it's eternally perfect and beautiful. And what's more, he's the controller of everything. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sakjirananda Vigraha, Anadi Radha Govinda, Sarva Karanakaram. He's the cause of all causes. There's an intelligent cause who is also supremely benevolent behind everything. So he comes to the world from time to time to enact his pastimes in this world to attract the minds of the conditioned souls who are used to watching Bollywood films. And Bollywood, Hollywood, it's actually a huge industry. We drove by the Sony complex the other day in Los Angeles, and it's as big as a city. And I was thinking, people are certainly purchasing a lot of films. Otherwise, how are they paying for all this? To watch some story play out on a screen about some people falling in love, running away, and then their dog gets hit by a car, whatever happens, unfolds, they save the dog, everyone lives happily ever after. And everyone pays how much ever it is for a movie nowadays, probably $50, I don't know. So the real narrative is going on in the spiritual world. So Krishna brings his play to this material world, as Queen Kunti says, Maya javanikachanam ajnatoksa jamavyam nalakshate modadrisha nato natya daroyata. Krishna, she's praying to Krishna, she says, you're just like an actor on the stage. People can't see that you're playing a role here. And you're covered by your internal potency for the devotees and for those who are materialists, covered by the external energy. Everyone, according to their capability, sees more or less of Krishna. For instance, this principle is something that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yeyatamam prapadyante tams tataiva bhajamyaham manavartante manusha partasarvasha. That as a soul surrenders unto me, then I proportionately reveal myself to such a person. And in the Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami points it out when he says that the people, dasyam gatanam paradaivatena, those who are servants of the Lord in a mood of reverence, they see the Lord as Narayana Vaikuntha, mayashritanam naradharakena. Those are covered by the illusory energies. Just see him as an ordinary boy, a coward boy. What's the big deal, they think. And then sakambraja rukrita punya punjaha, those who have amassed heaps and heaps, Prabhupada says, of spiritually based pious activities, are actually playing with the Lord personally and wrestling with him as cowherd boys, running after him. He's putting food in their mouths. They're taking food out of their mouth and putting in Krishna's mouth. They're playing with him, just as cowherd boys. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to the temperament and the heart of the particular devotee, reveals himself and interacts in a certain way. And when he comes to this world to manifest his pastimes, they're always amazing and spectacular. And as Prahlad Maharaj says in his prayers in the 9th chapter of the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they're always for the good of everyone. All his pastimes. He completes many purposes, serves many purposes at once when he comes to perform his pastimes. For the good of everyone. They're all benevolent, they're all good. And anyone who hears about them, says Shukadeva Goswami, that 3 kinds of people get benefited by hearing about these pastimes. Vasudeva kata prashna purusham strin punatihi vaktaram prachakam shrotrims tatpadam salilam yata. Who are the 3 people? The ones who speak about it, the ones who listen to hear the pastimes, and everybody else in between who hears the vibration. They become purified also. They become benefited. That's how all good the transcendental vibration about the Lord is. So Lord Ramachandra is one of the celebrated manifestations of the Lord. He has his own realm in the spiritual world. Ayodhya is a part of the spiritual world in which Lord Ramachandra, Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman all reside. And the devotees relish worshiping that most glorious form of Lord Ramachandra there in that section of Vaikuntha. And there, the mood is Maryada. If you read in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, you'll find it's not as ceremonious in Ayodhya as it is in other parts of Vaikuntha, where the devotees worship Narayan four-handed Narayan. But it's not also like Vrindavan, where there's complete unceremonious worship of Krishna. And that the love between Radha and Krishna is definitely unceremonious. Of course, there's two aspects to it. There's wedded and unwedded love that's described, but our acharyas point out that the most exalted of the relationships of Radha Krishna in Vrindavan are unwedded loves because of its seemingly tenuous nature. That at any moment that the pastime can be interrupted because it's supposedly ill-advised that Radha and Krishna are meeting. And in Ayodhya, the mood of Ramachandra is Maryada. And that is that he's dutiful and shows dharma. And in the pastime of the gopis running off into the forest to be with Krishna, they're apparently transgressing the dharma, that a young man and young woman, unmarried, should not meet in the forest. However, there's a higher principle, because the true dharma of every soul is to be completely surrendered to Krishna. And that's exhibited in the pastimes of the gopis and their unrestricted love for Krishna. And as described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and represented in the Chaitanya Manjusha, Arajo Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachadupasana Rajabudu Vargena Vokalpita. The highest method of worshiping the Supreme Personality of God is that which is conceived by the gopis of Vrindavan. And their spontaneous way of supposedly breaking all the rules and regulations of the society in order to surrender to Krishna and to be with him. Ramachandra, on the other hand, as we know from his pastimes when he's in the forest and the great rishis are observing the beautiful form of the Lord, and in their meditations to begin to pray that they could have a conjugal relationship with Ramachandra. Ramachandra, of course, is omniscient and can understand the purpose of these great sages and fulfills their desire, but not immediately, because in that appearance as Ramachandra, he's ekapatni vrat, one wife, and he's very careful not to transgress even the tiniest bit the dharma of a king and of an ideal human being in society. Therefore, he fulfills their desires later, and you'll find in the commentaries by our acharyas that those very same rishis who desire to be in a conjugal relationship with Sri Ramachandra appear later in Lord Krishna's pastimes as gopis, so that they can interact with him in that unceremonious way. So each one of the appearances of the Lord, also in each one of the appearances, he exhibits his relationships with devotees in different ways. And the story of the Ramayana, of course, is epic in India. If the Ramayana plays on television, I've been told, then the streets are empty. Everyone stays home to watch. Of course, in Thailand, if you drive around, you'll find that the influence of the Ramayana and the story of Ram, which has captured the hearts and minds of people all over the world, also in Indonesia, where they play the gamelan and they have music glorifying Lord Ram, and plays as well. They do puppet shows and other kinds of dramas, remembering the hero's journey. This is the original hero's journey, which was really ripped off by Star Wars. George Lucas, heard the Ramayana and said, this is a perfect story. I mean, there have been other heroes' stories, to be sure, but this is an exact replica, Star Wars, of Ramayana, down to the Chewy, who was the, if I'm not mistaken, and I hope I don't make any mistakes or offenses, but it was that kind of bear-like creature who, and then there all the other characters are there complete. You can check it, and the dark side, the Force, against the good and evil, and the Luke Skywalker who goes off as the unlikely hero of the whole thing and ends up coming back. I think not sure if I've seen the whole thing or remember correctly, but he comes back a great hero, so forth. But you can check it. I'm not recommending necessarily, but it has a one-to-one correlation. That story actually is recounted by Valmiki Muni, who was in another incarnation in his life, a person who had been captured by the modes of material nature and had taken to the most degraded of livelihoods, hunting and so forth, and was really depressed and wondering how to get out of the modes of material nature. And he met his spiritual master, Narada Muni, who instructed him on how to chant the name of Ram. And he gave him the instruction, since Valmiki wasn't able to articulate the name. He felt too sinful to say Rama. So he told him to chant Mara. You all know the story. So he said Mara, 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 and he chanted Ram. And by that process became completely clairvoyant in seeing the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra before him. And just as Valmiki had spoken a curse against another hunter who he saw shoot some birds who were mating at the time, and he became angry. When he spoke the curse, it came out in perfect meter, and he wondered, what was that? When he went back to his hermitage and he explained it to his guru, he told him that actually this is the precursor to the Ramayana, and Brahma appeared and gave him the instruction that now you must speak the Ramayana in this exact meter. Actually, this is how Shastra becomes revealed. We find with Kaviraj Goswami, in speaking the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says, I have no idea how I'm doing this. So I'm too old for this. I can't even see. He had to hold his eyelids up like this because they were so droopy. And then he could barely walk. He was bent over. And he was so old and apparently invalid. But still, he said, somehow or other, by the mercy of the devotees, I am able to envision the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and also, of course, he was working from the diaries of Sarup Damodar and other devotees and manifested them. So, same way, Valmiki Muni was empowered to speak these pastimes of Lord Ramachandra. And it's not as if he was sitting there thinking, like, oh, what happened next? It's more that he was watching the pastimes as if he were in the same room and then writing them down, recording what was actually happening. This is revealed scripture. So, Sri Ramachandra, there are many beloved pastimes which all of you have just finished listening to. Was it completed? That didn't sound very confident. Yes. It was like, yes, yes.
Yes, yes, it was completed, Maharaj.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to all the devotees. If you get on a cycle where every year you go through a particular reading of Bhagavatam, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, it becomes part of your life. That's what you do during that part of the year. Then you're filling up your life, your mind, your heart with this most valuable asset, which is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana. Just by hearing, you're getting punya. But not any kind of punya. It's Bhakti and Mukhi Sukriti, or punya that's based in the vibration that comes from the mouths and hearts of pure devotees. And then we become the receptacle for that by hearing in disciplic succession, submissively. That's the process. Jnane priyasam urapasya namanta eva, jivanti san mukharitam bhavadiya vartam. Staneti. Somebody turn on a fan, because I see a few devotees look a tiny bit warm. Jnane priyasam urapasya namanta eva, jivanti san mukharitam bhavadiya vartam. Stane stita shrutikatam tanavanmanobir. Ye prayaso jita jito pyasitaishtra lokyam. This Brahma said that don't try to understand the pastimes of the Lord intellectually. It's not an intellectual exercise, although we take Bhakti Shastri and all these things. It's not really about regurgitating information, getting a score and a diploma, although we get all that. That's an excuse to motivate us sometimes. But he said, try to serve that sound vibration with your body, mind, and words. Submissively hear it. And just by doing that, you will develop spontaneous love for Krishna, so much so that you'll be able to conquer that whom is unconquerable. That person that is unconquerable, that's ajita, you'll conquer by the principle of loving devotional service to the Lord. So, Ramachandra, Prabhu as Ramachandra, who appeared in the world as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and along with his expansions, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna came in the drama. They appeared from the drama of Dasharath Maharaj, who is a descendant of Maharaj Khatvanga. We can hear about that in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the descendants who are coming down into the dynasty of Lord Ram. And then, of course, we hear past the 9th canto of the appearance of Lord Krishna. And Ramachandra appeared in the family of Dasarath. He was Dasarath, despondent for not having a successor. It is very important for kings to have a successor, male child who could take the throne as a king and carry on the legacy of the father. But he didn't have that, so he had to take a benediction from the great sage. It was an Angira who gave the blessing that I will perform a yajna, and from this yajna, was it Rishashinga who actually performed the yajna? He was the one who gave the benediction. And who gave the benediction? I'm sorry? I can't hear it behind Mass. You got to be really articulate. Angira Muni and Rishashinga, of course, he's such an auspicious personality that he had to be there to do the yajna for it to be successful. But the result of the yajna was that a Vishnu Duta came out from the yajna fire with a pot that had, for lack of a better term, sweet rice that was potent, and that any one of the wives of Dasarath who would drink it would then have offspring. And so he gave half of it to Kaushalya. He gave a quarter of it to Kaikeyi, and he gave 2/8 to... Can't hear anything muffled in... Sumitra, thank you. So From that, the Chaturvyuha, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha manifested as Ramachandra and his 4 brothers, Bharat, Lakshman, Shatrugya, 3 brothers. And they grew up in Ayodhya in a loving environment. They were the cynosure of everyone's vision there in Ayodhya. Because, of course, everyone was celebrating the fact that the great king Dasarath, their benefactor, their emperor, their worshipable Lord, now had offspring who could carry on the kingdom. And you can imagine there in Ayodhya how beautiful were these princes who were coming and going, taking their military instruction, going to and from their studies, growing up. And everyone was mesmerized by this, not the least of whom was Dasarath himself, who was absolutely in love and attached to his sons, especially to Ram. And so, at a time when Ram was 16 years old, the sage Vishamrita made a surprise visit to Ayodhya. And, of course, we should be prepared in our lives to hand over. In fact, we should be preemptive as much as possible to hand over to Krishna all that we think is ours. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Manasa deho geho yo kichu more. I don't really own anything. Everything I have, my Lord, he sings, that belongs to you. Wife, my children, my house, all my income. What to speak of my very self? Even I don't belong to me. I belong to you, Krishna. This is the mood of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and all pure devotees. And the Sri Upanishad, of course, tells us that this should be our guiding principle in life. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita magradha kasasudanam. We should know everything animate or inanimate within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. And we should take only those things that are set aside as our quota. People make demarcations in this world, say, this is mine, that's for you. But Krishna in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita says, those who are in spiritual consciousness, although they may abide by the rules of the state and show a visa when they cross into another country. Of course, in older days, sadhus didn't have to do that. They just go straight through. Even in fairly recent days, Prabhupada didn't have to go through security in some places because they saw, here's a sadhu, let him through. That doesn't happen anymore. The point is that one should always consider whatever I have belongs to Krishna. It's to be engaged in his service. Any of the things that are under my care are there temporarily. They're given to me as a concession, as my quota to be used in his service. And so when Vishamrita came, this is the prerogative of a sadhu or sage who comes and asks for something. And I can remember sadhus coming to our house. I remember once, I think there was some brand new electronic thing that had come out, and he was sitting there, and the sadhu said, I think I need that. And had to immediately arrange to give it. I remember also as a brahmachari, my father had given me a watch, which was quite advanced for the time because it had an alarm on it. No watches had alarms, and there was a sannyasi who approached me and said, I need the watch. And I just took it off. I said, here you go. My father said, what happens every time I give you something, you give it away? So when Vishwamrita came to Maharaj Dasarath, who greeted him with a sage's welcome and washed his lotus feet and offered him a seat and offered him, whatever you wish, I will provide for you. This is the mood of the householder meeting the renunciate. And so Vishwamrita said, yes, I need something from you. I need your son Ram. And just those words acted like a thunderbolt into the heart of Dasarath. There was nothing he was more attached to in this world than his son Ram. And now the sage Vishwamrita comes. He had already made the proclamation that whatever you wish, I will give you. Of course, this happens sometimes in the story of Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj. It's known, at least in the histories, that a wealthy capitalist came to visit him where he was doing his bhajan. As wealthy man was thinking, I have everything else in the world, I also need a guru to be up with the current fashions of the world. Shastra says I need a guru. I don't know how much it'll cost, but, let me go find out. So he went there to the lonely place where Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj was doing his bhajan, offered his prostrate obeisances, and begged, please, I have come here to surrender to you, and please accept me as your disciple. I will give you anything you like. And he was thinking that, what could he need? He sits here in the field, maybe I'll build him a house or even a temple. What's it to me? That's not that expensive for my budget. But Gaurkishore Das Babaji said, yes, I'll accept you. You only dakshina that I ask you is you don't go home. You stay here with me and chant and don't go home. And that man ran away. So when the sage actually comes and says, I'll take your son, please, what will be the response? And Dasarath, of course, it's transcendental because Rama is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is all purifying. Nonetheless, in this context, he hesitated. He said, no. I'll tell you what I can do for you. I'll go. I'll bring an akshohini of soldiers with me, the best trained soldiers. Vishwamrita had asked because Maricha and Sabahu were destroying the sacrificial performances, as demons like to do. Every Harinam party in the world has always been somebody called the cops. Somebody threw something. Somebody turned off the power. Whatever it is, the Madangas were broken after Srivasangam opened up. Demons always want to stop the sound vibration of the transcendental world. It's like, no, keep it down here. We like all the commercials and everything else. The mundane vibration doesn't appeal to them. So these demons were destroying the sacrifices, and they were servants of Ravana, who was so powerful he had benedictions that he could overcome any demigod. So Dasarath said, I'll bring an akshohini, I'll come myself. My son, he's a little young. He's 16, let him stay home, go through a little more training. When he grows up, maybe sometime. And Vishwamrita said, okay, I understand. Beggars don't always get what they ask for. And besides that, I was only testing you. I wanted to see you if you were satyavadi, if you actually tell the truth. Because you said you'll give anything, but now you're saying maybe not. Of course, I don't know anyone in the history of your dynasty who's ever told a lie. But now I see there's a first to everything. And of course, even with these thunderbolt-like words, Dasara was still attached. Has anybody here ever been attached to something so much? Even you're asked for it, even the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative comes and says, you should give this up. And it's like, I can't do that. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had a person who came to take initiation from him, but he had a mustache. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, no mustache. And the man said, come on. He went away from that place. He came back later reconsidering. All right, it's just a mustache, but okay, so many people. No onions, garlic. What? We've had that in our family forever. How could we give up onions and garlic? Onions and garlic. It stinks to high heaven. And, what is it? What we become attached to in this material world? Some facial hair and some stinky herbs. And when the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes, which, by the way, famous culinary artists say garlic ruins everything. It just covers the taste of it. Even chefs and so forth don't like it in many places. They say, this is horrible stuff. But that's what I become attached to in the material world. And when the Supreme Lord, his representative, comes and says, oh, come with me, it's like, no, but my mustache. No, but my stinky herbs, it's in my family. So, of course, Dasarath is attached to his son, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's showing the way that we become attached in this world. And when the request comes, will I be ready? It's a good preparation to see how we can preemptively invest everything, or I should say, divest myself of all that I think is mine in this world. It doesn't mean that we have to go barefoot, but it means that we should see that whatever I have is being used in the service of the Lord, and that I'm not attached to it. One of the servants of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had developed an amazing community in his sojourn as a preacher in the Gaudiya Math. And some other devotees in that organization had felt that, well, this person is just looking for aggrandizement. And he got lucky, or he just has some special skill that he's able to do this, but he's attached. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta called him and said, how is your project going? He said, it's been phenomenal. It's expanding like anything. And he gave the details to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who then said, I am taking that service away, and I'm going to relocate you to another place. His disciple said, yes, Maharaj, right away. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, okay, you can stay. It's the heart of the devotee, is it service for service? So Dasarath, he hesitated. He said, I'll send my armies, not Ram. Vasishta, his personal priest, intervened. He said to Vishwamrita, hold on, let me talk to him. He explained to his disciple Dasarath, first of all, this is Vishwamrita. You don't want to cross him. Vasishta knows. You all know that they had a huge kerfuffle. And so he knew the power of Vishwamrita. What's more, he knew the power of Ram. He said, actually, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not something that Dasarath can digest with his parental affection. But he also said, don't worry, Vishwamrita he could kill these demons himself, but he wants to bequeath to your son these weapons, Bal, Ati Bal. He had powerful mystic weaponry, and it could conquer sleep, he could have longevity, all of these powers that a yogi can develop. He wanted to offer them to Ram and was inviting him to service. So Dasarath relented. He gave his son the picture of, as you can see in your minds and hearts, of Vishamrita walking out of the city. This is the first time Ram left, when he was 16. Of course, later we know in the next chapter he leaves for 14 years in so-called banishment from the kingdom. For the first time, walking out as young boys, adolescents, with the bows over their shoulders. They've just recently been trained. The sage walking in front, and these two effulgent boys walking behind, going off into the unknown to fight these very powerful Rakshasas. And of course, it's described blow by blow in the Ramayana, how they go into the forest in different places with Vishamrita. They find holy places where they offer prayers, and then they meet up with the demons and defeat them. Maricha is spared, thrown by the arrow of Ram into the ocean, because later he will be engaged in another pastime with the Lord. The other demons vanquished very easily, and Kar and Dushana, their armies, thousands of Rakshasas slaughtered by Ram and his army, or excuse me, just as his brother in the forest. News gets back to Ravana. At that time also, is everyone okay? Do you want to make a reflection this time, or should we just keep going? You want to take a few reflections to change of pace. Let's hear. Yes, Priya Kishori, and here comes the perfectly sterilized microphone.
Hare Krishna. So my reflection is, when we're giving to Krishna, more than what, I've heard this, I believe in your class, Prabhu, that more than what we give him, he sees what we're holding back. And even though Dasharath Maharaj, he had this intense attachment for Krishna, for Lord Ram, and I just was reflecting on that point, that what we hold back matters more than what we give.
Wow, that's an interesting calculation. That's something that we can analyze in ourselves and see, okay, I'm giving this, just like Gopalaban. Prabhupada used to tell Gopalaban stories, and he said Gopalaban was a rascal. So his friends would ask, Gopalaban, you're such a rascal. Why you don't ever offer anything to Bhagavan? And one day Gopalaban, walking back from the field with a huge tray of grains, was hit with a blast of wind that knocked the grains high into the sky, was flying away, and he said, Govinda Bhog, I offer that. Not that when it gets knocked off the plate, because I can't use it anymore, that's my offering. But if I'm observant of what I actually have to offer and I give it now, or I prepare myself to give to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's counterintuitive. I think if I don't have it, I can't survive. But actually, if I analyze that my real power in life comes from my surrender. Prabhupada emphasized this again and again, that he said, I heard just 2 days ago, he said, I'm not claiming to be a pure devotee. He said, my only qualification is that I followed the order of my spiritual master. And so that willingness to commit to the Lord's plan rather than mine, and to give him what I think is mine, is our true asset in life. Okay, a couple more. Who else had their hand up? Yes, Monisha.
So I wanted to share how you were talking about we go behind mundane things such as movies. And in my stats class, we had to take a survey in thinking about what is most memorable. What do you most remember from the early days of your childhood? And the three categories were movies, books, or like social media, and like posts on it. And so the highest ranking was books and reading. And I was thinking that when I've watched movies and things when I was younger, I don't remember any of that now. And although I had such a great eagerness to watch it, and but now I don't remember anything, nothing, the plot or anything. And I was thinking about the same way so many pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, or just pastimes of the Lord, is so beautiful and has so much taste to it that even though it's been so many years since I've looked back on those books, I can still remember the essence of what was being said. So I was just thinking that along the lines of how the Supreme Lord is a person and he has a personality, it's really comforting to know that he's listening to us and he cares for us.
Well, the first part of what you said about remembering books, movies, and social media, or in general, what we're exposed to, we're going to remember. Prabhupada mentions in his Bhagavatam commentary that in simple rural life in the Vedic times, people would put in a day's work, and then in the evening they would come and meet and watch a drama about Ramachandra or Krishna, or they'd hear somebody speak. And he says that even today, when somebody's speaking, even if it's a Mayavadi, he says, thousands of people will come because they want to hear something spiritual. It's part of the culture. And if you analyze what Prabhupada did when he set up ISKCON, he set up that same culture. There was an morning and evening program where everyone could just come and hear. And it's the way in which we take in the transcendental vibration. It's what we remember. Otherwise, there's an alternative to that, which is not a viable alternative, but there's TV, there's radio, there's all kinds of vibration available. But it's a waste of time, ultimately, unless there's a specific purpose for tuning into it for one's service. But other than that, it becomes the mainstay of our consciousness. And then we become diverted from the purpose of life. And secondly, you pointed out how Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person. And I was reading about how people are attracted in literature, movies, shows, to characters. That's what they're most looking for, is the personality within it. And so the personality of Godhead and Krishna and all his pastimes are supremely interesting. And if we can get our minds attached to that, as Prabhupada says in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, the purpose of life is to transfer our attention from reading mundane literatures to reading transcendental literatures. And if we can do that, then we're successful. Cross that bridge. Nice points. One more? Yes, Balaram. And if you're on Zoom and you want to make a point, just feel free. By now, everyone feels right at home at Zoom, in Zoom.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, okay, yes, please.
Thank you for the wonderful pastime. And especially I liked where Dasharat Maharaj is giving away Ram with Vishwamitra. So it's interesting to note how these two personalities think from two different perspectives. Dasharat Maharaj having Vatsalya, he is telling Ram, he's hesitant to give Ram because he's telling Ram has Rajiv Lochan, means his eyes are like lotus petal, and lotus closes at night. So in the dusk, Ram gets tired and he takes rest. And Vishwamitra is telling, yes, Rajiv Lochan, correct. But Rajiv Lochan, he means that he has lotus eyes, and wherever that eye fall, it vanishes all the impurity or disturbance from that place. So how wonderfully you described, and of course how you also describe how Vasishta does the mediation, taking shelter of the Guru, such a big confusion, and he overcomes so difficult thing, but he ultimately takes the right decision of giving to Vishwamitra. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Shamrupa Prabhu. That brought to my mind the ways that Krishna and Balaram are described when they enter into the wrestling arena in Mathura. And the various members of the audience see him according to their relationship with Krishna. For instance, the yogis there see Paramatma. I thought that was funny. Krishna and Balaram are walking into the arena, and the yogis say, "Oh, there's Paramatma." The young ladies see the most beautiful Cupid. Those who are with a parental mood see these adorable young boys, and materialistic people just see, what are these kids doing here? So yeah, a point well taken. I like that. According to the relationship of the different devotees who are interacting with Lord Ram, they see him differently. Very nice. And Balaram.
Hare Krishna. When you were talking about the pastime of Lord Ram leaving Ayodhya with Vishwamitra Muni, I was reminded of when Nityananda Prabhu left Hadai Pandit, when the Brahmana asked for him to assist him in his pilgrimage. And what I was thinking was, I was connecting that back to the beginning where you said how God is a person, so he experiences emotions similar to how we experience emotions. And it's amazing how like everything is covered, and this is like another example. This kind of parental separation is almost in every pastime, even in Krishna, even with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I found that very interesting that the Lord displays all emotions everywhere.
Yes, and Prabhupada's meticulous in pointing out the difference as well. And especially he writes in one of his purports, and I think that Maharaj has included it in a footnote in his book about Ramachandra, the summary of the Ramayana, that although it appears to be mundane love, the way a man, when he loses his wife, that he becomes overwhelmed with feelings of separation. And so Prabhupada says in the material world, this is a material feeling, actually, because we're not our bodies, and it's an illusory type of attachment. However, in the case of Ramachandra, it's called Vipralamba, and it's the basis of the greatest feeling of bliss. And the Lord enjoys that, the separation from Sita after she's taken away. Although counterintuitively it seems like great suffering, and all those who are uneducated in the spiritual science think, oh, this seems like the pastimes of the material world, but it's actually the original rasa, whereas the one in the material world is a reflected rasa. The result is different. In the spiritual world, it's bliss. In the material world, it's actual misery. And the two, to understand the spiritual science, as we spoke about in the beginning, the reflected versus the source of the reflected world have to be understood. Thank you for those points. And you brought up Ram's leaving, so he did go away. And during that pastime of him killing the demons, in assisting, doing service to Vishwamrita, there was a announcement and an invitation of Vishwamrita to come to the town of Janak Maharaj, which is called Janakpur? What is his town? Janak Maharaj. Mm-hmm. We're calling our experts there on the panel. We see 6 devotees on the Zoom. Okay, so there is the swayamvar for Sita. Mitala, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good, good devotee. Mithila, the kingdom of, and the hometown of Janak Maharaj. And there he's having a swayamvar. So in the kingdom where there's a very qualified princess, she chooses her own husband. And usually in the Kshatriya families, there's some sort of test. We know that Krishna, although he had to wrestle with bulls, and he asked, I'd like to be exempted from this, please. Not because he was afraid of the bulls, but it was just, why bother? The king said, no, I already said that this is the test, so please, please do this. So the test to see who could take the hand of Sita was that there was a bow of Lord Shiva. And actually, Ramayana describes how early on in her life, when doing some cleaning, Sita had lifted up the bow with one hand and cleaned underneath it, as you do like when you're just... And Dasa and Janak Maharaj had noticed this. So in the swayamvar, he wanted that, of course, anyone who would marry Sita would be stronger than she. He already knew she could lift up the bow. So it would have to be somebody who could not only lift it up, but also string the bow. So Vishwamrita had arrived there, and even before the swayamvar ceremony had happened, some of the associates of Sita had seen Ram and Lakshman and come back and reported to her that they had seen the most beautiful of all boys they had ever laid their eyes on, and that she had to see him. And when Ramachandra and Sita had laid eyes upon each other, there was this moment of cognition before the swayamvar. Ramachandra felt ashamed of this because he felt that he had cast his glance upon an unmarried woman. However, of course, it's his eternal consort. So there's a natural attraction. In the swayamvar, many kings came from various parts of the world to try to take the hand of Sita. And they would approach, and some couldn't pick up the bow. Some were able to pick it up, but not to string it. And it appeared as if it was futile. And Sita already had her mind now fixed on this young man, Ram, who had come into Mithila. And so then Janak stood up and said, "Are there no more heroes left in the world? No more strong men who could actually lift this bow and string it?" And Lakshman waxed angry. We have someone right here who can do it. Ramachandra calmed him down. And Ramachandra took permission from Vishwamrita to go and string the bow. At that time, Sita was thinking, we should have never made such a test. How would this young man, with such delicate and beautiful body, actually even be able to lift the bow, to speak of string it? And Janak then was also thinking, same thing, what's going to happen? My daughter may go without marrying anybody now, that I made such a strong test. So made the bar so high. So, of course, our hero, Ram, approached the bow, easily picked it up. Not just strung it, but kept bending it further and further until snap. And this thunderous sound of the breaking of the bow put all the heads of all the other participants down as they felt shameful, many of whom couldn't even budge the bow, and they saw this young prince come and break it. And of course, the heart of Sita. It was jubilant. And the marriage was set between Sita and Ram. And as it turned out, there were other sisters to accommodate Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna. And then we hear that there were omens that in the capital Ayodhya, there were signs that some ill fortune would come. Perhaps the days of Dasarath were numbered in Ayodhya. And so Ram, Vishwamitra, Lakshman all went back to Ayodhya. And of course, that brings us to the next chapter. And I'm just going to say a few words about this next section. And that is that, of course, we know that the people of Ayodhya were celebrating that Ram would be coronated as the king. It was an expedited celebration because Dasarath was worried about the omens. And this was fine with everybody in Ayodhya, except for Manthara, the maidservant of Kaikeyi, who came and reminded her that, actually, it didn't remind her, but just put a seed in her head that when Ramachandra takes the throne, your son is going to be pushed out. And not only that, you'll become the maidservant of Kaushalya. No longer will you have any power. At first she resisted, but Manthara, in her ill-intended ways, had put this seed of doubt in her mind, in Kaikeyi's mind, and then reminded her that there are these boons that your husband gave you many years ago. Don't you hate that when that happens? Of course, throughout the Ramayana, we find out how one's word is one's bond. If you say it, you have to follow up on it. And this is agonizingly true in the story of the Ramayana, because now Kaikeyi brings this to the attention of Dasarath, who's getting ready for the coronation, and she declares that now I want not only my son coronated instead of Ram, but Ram has to go to the forest. So we know how this affected Dasarath, who fainted and was disconsolate after understanding her resolve. And when Ramachandra came to greet his father and found him disconsolate and asked Kaikeyi, she informed him, he wants you to go to the forest. You're being sent away, and Bharat will be installed as the king. So Ram then went back to meet his mother and inform others. I'm going rather quickly through this part. There's many more details, but this is a summary. And when he meets his mother, Kaushalya, of course, they notice that he's not traveling on a palanquin. He doesn't have the typical trappings of the soon-to-be coronated emperor. He's walking barefoot, and he comes to meet his mother and informs her that I'm to go to the forest. At that time, there's a hue and cry in the palace of Kaushalya. Others come in and protest that you don't have to do this, but Ram is resolute. This is actually mentioned in a verse in the Bhagavatam, Tyaktva Sadusyaja Saripshita Raja Lakshmin Dharmishta Arya Vachasa Yadagararanyam Maya Mrgam Tayita Yips Taman Vadavan Vande Mahapurushate Charanada Vindam. This describes Ramachandra that Arya Vachasa means he took the words of his father, the Arya, as absolute command. Our acharyas, Vaishnava acharyas talking about the Ramayana, have frequently mentioned this, how powerful is the order of the spiritual master. Just as Ramachandra, Arya Vachasa, he took the order of his father as absolute. And even Jaimini, others told him, no, where is this God that you're following? He was trying to act like an atheist, even though he wrote Purvamimamsa, all the special rules of it. You don't have to follow these rules. We can't even see God. Ramachandra said, cut it out. I know you're not an atheist. And all the people were so shocked by this news. But Ramachandra was completely resolute in following Arya Vachasa, the order of his father. I have to follow this. They brought in the garments of one to be banished to the forest. It's actually a very pathetic scene. In other words, it evokes pathos. Thank you very much. In that this kind of dress, Asamanjasa was a previous member of the dynasty of Dasarath who had been banished to the forest for good reason. Even as a child, he was a bad seed. He used to kill his friends when playing with them. And when he grew up, he became such an abominable personality that he was actually truly banished for good reason to go to the forest. And in adding to this, taking away his stature, they took away his silk robes and they gave him this tree bark to wear. So this time, some argued that Ram should go to the forest, but he keeps his royal clothing. However, Kaikeyi said, no, he's being banished to the forest. He should wear this same bark. And Ram concurred, yes. My descendant, or my previous, one of the ancestors, Asamanjasa, who was defamed, he wore this tree bark when he went to the forest, so I will also wear it. And similarly, Lakshman and Sita, with her delicate body, also put on this very scratchy, uncomfortable, and awkward kind of dress. And so at this scene, all the hearts of the members, all of the members of the kingdom, seeing all of them lined up in tree bark, ready to leave the kingdom, were heartbroken. And as they left Ayodhya, everyone followed them until Ram devised a way to break away from all of them where they were sleeping. And there's a particular scene that always touches me when, as they're leaving for the forest, and leaving behind all the people of Ayodhya, they have to cross over the river, and a boatman takes them across. And when they come to the other side, Sita, wanting to reward the boatman, takes off her ring and says, "You please take this as payment." Now there's a tradition in Vedic culture that if you're of the same profession, you don't pay the other person. You know, if it's a shoemaker, the shoemaker doesn't pay another shoemaker anything. They just exchange services. There's no payment necessary. We're takayo. We're together on this, same profession. So he said, "I can't accept your payment, Lord Ram, because we're in the same profession." And Ramachandra said, "Please explain. I'm an emperor, or I'm a prince, and you're a boatman. How is it that we're in the same profession?" And the boatman says, "Actually, just as I've taken you across the river, I pray that when I leave this world, you will take me across the ocean of birth and death. You'll ply me across in the boat of your lotus feet." And it reminded me of a story from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was performing his Mahaprakash, and he was offering benedictions to all of his devotees. Some people didn't even know who all his devotees were, but he was calling them one by one, and Gangadas and his family came before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was offering benedictions. And in each one, when each one would arrive, he would tell them something that only they would know. And Gangadas and his family had been accosted almost in a dark part of town when they were leaving from some yajna, and they were trying to make it home. It was getting late, and he was there with his wife and young daughter, and there was a danger in the air that they may be accosted and molested. This is one of the most horrible feelings one could possibly have if anyone's been in such a situation. Just the prospect of one's whole life being ruined in 1 second by some beastly type of person. So they were in that situation, hair standing on end out of fear, standing at the side of the Ganga, and he was thinking, maybe I will drown myself and my family here rather than be accosted, which is a real prospect. And just out of nowhere, a boatman showed up and said, "Where are you going?" And they said, "Please take us away from here." And the boatman took them across the river to safety. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said to Ganga and his family that, "Do you remember that incident?" And he said, "Yes, I do, my lord." And he said, "That was me. I was the boatman who took you across in your darkest hour, the time of fear." So in the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Tyaktva sadusyaja surepchita raja lakshman dharmishta arya vachasa yadagaranya mayamrigam dayita yitsitaman badavan. It's mentioned that the lotus feet of the Lord, the Mahapurush, are the object of worship, meditation, because they are the boat that can take us across the ocean of material existence. So, those who, like the boatman, take time and trouble in this life to deliver others, like all of you are doing. You're organizing your life around the principle of extending the transcendental knowledge to people, giving them shelter so that they can have devotee association, giving prasad, going out to various neighborhoods, street corners, parking lots, and extending the boat of transcendental knowledge to people so they can go across. You're also in the same profession as Lord Ramachandra. And for those who dedicate themselves to this, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, none different from Lord Ram, such people are the most dear to me, as they're extending this mercy, my mercy, to everybody else. So Ramachandra is so merciful, Sakradeva Prapanoyas. He says, if one time, Sakradeva Prapanoyas, one time somebody says, "I surrender to you." Prabhupada quotes this verse many times throughout his purports. That from that day forward, I give this promise that I'll always be the protector of that devotee who's one time said, "My Lord, I surrender to you." Does anybody want to say it? You got to be quick. We have the opportunity. So it's a prayer. It's so simple devotional service. Krishna says, "Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, mami vaishyas yuktaiva manamat parayana." If you just bow down or surrender or offer yourself as a servant of the Lord, and Krishna will accept you as a devotee. And the simple process of devotional service means to just sit down and listen to the pastimes and instructions of the Lord, and then take a little effort to chant His names. And by that, everything will become perfect. Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman ki jai. The pastimes of the Lord are an ocean. All one can do is try one's best to recount them, to recall the instructions of the Lord, to try to weave them together as much as possible. And by that process, we become purified. So now it is 2 minutes to 7 o'clock. And what is our schedule? So Nirkul is saying we're having lectures, talks, and kirtans all night long. 7 till 7:30. And then there's arati. Okay, so let's chant a little bit. Two sets of Bhagavatams have just been sponsored. If anybody would like to sponsor 2 sets of Bhagavatams, you can text Malini if you want on this day of Lord Ramachandra's appearance day to sponsor a set of Bhagavatams. You can text Malini right now. Hey, that's a good technique, Malini. I like this. That's a good idea too, to sponsor that. So we're going to take a 1-minute break, and we're going to come back and have some kirtan. Can you make some transcendental sound vibration for 1 minute? Thank you. Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman ki jai. Shri Ramanavami ki jai. Gaur Premanande Haribol.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Rama Rama.
Yeah, I don't. Do you want me to? What's the first thing? Yeah, I don't think. Okay, I'm like.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Give me a little pentatonic. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I must say that the new lighting for the Acharya Sampradaya is absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. It's made my whole day, life, month life, should go in that order. Okay, this is a new tune we've been cooking up, but we don't have it down perfectly, so we're just going to sing a couple simple parts to it because it's got a kind of a simple, beautiful scale to it. And it does get caught in your head. We were singing it this afternoon down in Carmel, and I heard devotees afterwards walking around singing it. So it's one of those particular tunes that's hard to get out of your head. So if you don't like that you're walking around singing the holy name all day long, and you can't help yourself from dancing and feeling happy, and you'd rather feel morose or miserable, then we have a space in the shed you can hide for the next 10 minutes. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Make it count now.
Hare Hare.
Everyone at home, sing loud for the neighbors. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Haribo! Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Balaram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Anushree, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Rohini. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Part 2. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
More violin.
Hare Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rohini.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Back to one. Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Go Premanande Haribo.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare. Back to two. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everybody! Sita Ram, Lakshman Hanuman, Ki Jai!
Krishna, Hare Hare.
Sing it.
Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Everybody. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanande. And now we're going to have a beautiful, beautiful Artik ceremony with all the real paraphernalia. It's not virtual, it's actually, so there's incense and pure water, flowers to offer the Lord, and we're going to sing and observe the Artik ceremony. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That was the preface to the evening Artik, but now we're going to have a Sankirtan offering for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shriman Mahaprabhu, and Shri Shri Lakshmi Nrsimha.
Mataji, please go ahead.
Okay. Dear Srila Prabhupada, please accept our most humble obeisances at the dust of your lotus feet. All glories to your divine grace. We are gathered here on the most auspicious occasion, the appearance of Lord Ramachandra, to offer the results of our monthly Sankirtan festival entitled MSF of Praying for Courage. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 22:34, Lord Ramachandra, this verse is from Ramayana, said by Lord Ramachandra himself. Sakradeva prapanno yas davasmiti cha yachate abhayam sarvada tasmai dadham yetad vritam mama. It is my vow that if one only once seriously surrenders unto me, saying, My dear Lord, from this day I am yours, and prays to me for courage, I shall immediately award courage to that person, and he will always remain safe from that time on. Team ISV set the following goals for this MSF. One is to read the entire Ramayana by Sri Ramanavami and to distribute at least 15 Srimad Bhagavatam sets. The highlights of this MSF are: devotees are continuing to distribute books during the calling party. A new highlight is one devotee from Oklahoma joined our ISV calling party, and she wanted to learn how to distribute books and especially Srimad Bhagavatam sets. We partnered with her and distributed 2 Srimad Bhagavatam sets on 3-way calling. We also followed up with 2 contacts who read Srimad Bhagavatam first canto part 1 in the prison, and they were looking for the rest of the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. After talking to them, they happily accepted full set of Bhagavatam each. Kids Sankirtan team enthusiastically participated in this MSF, and they distributed 1 Chaitanya Charitamrita set, 1 Srimad Bhagavatam set, and they got sponsorship for 1 more Srimad Bhagavatam set. Team Motel Gita has started placing signs of self-realizations in motels, grocery stores, libraries, and others. They dispatched 10,000 signs of self-realization, and a total of 8 devotees participated in this MSF. Motel Gita also updated their website to reflect multiple channels like hospitals, libraries, and more. Western Sankirtan team went on 2 traveling Sankirtan outings and had great success in distributing books in Chico, Tahoe, and Reno. There they met wonderful souls who chanted the name of Gauranga and Nityananda and danced in ecstasy. Western Sankirtan team also distributed books at Walmarts, farmers markets, and other parks. In total, they collected $2,401.62 in Lakshmi, and they accrued 2,702.75 book points. Bhakti SF Center enthusiastically distributed thousands of books to many people in San Francisco, and they collected a total of $2,250 in Lakshmi. Only by the mercy of Lord Ramachandra, we are very happy to report that all the goals have been successfully met, surpassed, and smashed. The reading marathon was expertly organized by Gandharvika Mataji, and the entire Ramayana was recited on live broadcast by devotees of all ages. And with respect to books, in all, more than 40 devotees participated in Sankirtan this MSF. Team ISV accrued 14,887.35 in book points this MSF, This includes 26 Srimad Bhagavatam sets, 8 Chaitanya Charitamrita sets, and out of which 9 Bhagavatam sets and 1 CC set was sponsored. Team ISV collected $10,313.32 in Lakshmi this MSF. At these dire times where we see a lot of loved ones in India suffering, today we pray to Lord Ramachandra to protect everyone and give us all courage to push on this Sankirtan movement. Also, on this auspicious occasion, we want to announce Team ISV's Bhadra Purnima goal. In order to assist with the global goal of distributing at least 25,000 Srimad Bhagavatam sets, Team ISV is taking up a goal to distribute at least 2,000 Srimad Bhagavatam sets until Bhadra Purnima. We are seeking the blessings of Lord Ramachandra to help us fulfill this goal. We are just like a small squirrel trying to help build a huge bridge. We also thank all the devotees who enthusiastically participated in this MSF. We express our deepest gratitude to His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu, Her Grace Nirakula Mataji, and all of Srila Prabhupada's disciples for encouraging Team ISV.
Haribo!
MSF of Praying for Courage Ki. Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Ki. Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki. Shri Shri Lakshmi Narsingha Deva Ki. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Hare Krishna.
We offer our heartfelt appreciation and thanks to Her Grace Malini Devi Dasi and His Grace Shri Krishna Purushottam Prabhu for their leadership in taking us forward on this boat back to Godhead, distributing books in every single direction. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Also, I'd like to make special recognition for the Bhakti community for giving us a very safe place to bring people after we meet them on Sankirtan, whether it's in Reading, in a Walmart parking lot, in Tahoe, or any other place. After contacting the devotees, they can begin their process of devotional service in earnest. Bhakti community ki. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare
Krishna,
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Srivasa.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Stotarasata Shishivan Abhay Charanara Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Stotarasata Shishivan Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai.
Shri Radha Krishna Gokopina Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai Shri Ram Navami Avirbhav Maha Mahotsav Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Namaste Narashinghaya Pralalada Dadayine Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha Ilatanka Nakalaye Ito Nishingha Parato Nishingho Yato Yato Yamitato Nishingha Bahira Nishingo Ridaye Nrishingo Nrisinghamading Sharanam Prapadye Avakara Kamala Varena Kamaduta Shringam Dalitayeranakashi Utanu Bringam Keshavadrita Nadahare Rupa Jajagadisha Hare Jagadisha Hare Jagadisha Hare Ambala Kairannakashi Putalu Bringam Keshavadrita Kamalavare Nakamaduta Shringam Dalitayerandakashi Putandu Pringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jajagadisha Hare Jajagadisha Hare Jai Jagatisha Hare Namaduta Shringa
Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanuringa Jai Jagatisha Hare
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare
Jai Bhakti Vignamana Shinishing Nishingadev Ki. Bhakti Pravar Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki. Go Premanande Haribo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radhamanan Mohan Ji Ki Jai. Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Ji Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, finishing. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman going back to Ayodhya Ki. Gaur Premanande. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming to ISKCON of Silicon Valley to celebrate the Divine Appearance Day of Sri Ramachandra. And we thank everybody who worked so hard to make this temple so appealing, clean, sparkly. The deities looked absolutely radiant and beautiful tonight. And now we have a quick announcement, which is that Prashadam, you've all won a free gift. One packet, large packet of Prashadam offered to Sri Sri Radhamadan Mohan. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Sharidad Vijaja Jodindriya Tahe Kaha Jive Pele Vishaya Shakare Tarmadeti Poyati Lobo Muisu Turmati Take Jeta Katita Shangsade Krishna Bodha Doyamor Gori bare jihvajai Shaprasadana dilopa Shayanamrita pa Radha Krishna Gunagao Premedako Shri Chaitanya Nita Premedako Shri Chaitanya Nita Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Sapa Punya Vatam Rajan Vishwaso Navijayat Prasade Sarvadhukanam Anirasyo Pajayate Prasanna Chetaso Yashu Buddhiparya Patistit Tayo Prabhukta Satkanda Vasalankara Charchitaha Uttishta Bojino Dasas Davamayam Jayimahi Bhagavat Shri Mahaprasadiki Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo Vanchakalpadurusha Kripasnabhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Everyone, please keep the transcendental vibration going. Hare Krishna. Dream about Sri Ramachandra. Hare Krishna.